Hi folks, ThriceRisen here. It's been a while, but I am here because yesterday we had a Commander Jamboree at our local game store. We got cool, awesome promos. So pretty! Oh my god! But I've been planning on doing a video for a while about another Commander deck, and I thought it would be cool to break out the deck that I built for the Jamboree event yesterday. Now, this is not the exact deck that I took to the event. I have modified it since. I got impatient and I modified it before I could show it to you guys. But the deck is built around Tasigur, the Golden Fang. He's a 4/5 for 5 and a black, legendary creature human shaman, and he has Delve. Each card you exile from your graveyard while casting this spell pays for 1 colorless. So if you have enough in your graveyard, he can cost a black. And if you like to run him with a lot of spells and other things so that you can pay for his commander tax, and he basically never gets more expensive functionally if your deck is rolling around and rolling off correctly. And his special ability is you pay 2 and 2 of either green or blue. You put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard, then return a non-land card of an opponent's choice from your graveyard to your hand. This is important, as we will get into as we go through the deck. I'm going to briefly just go through this deck. I have a video that I'm going to make very shortly, in the next couple of days, detailing how I construct decks, how I break them down. But for now, we'll just go through the deck bit by bit. We have Dark Petition here. It's a great tutor card, and because I'm running a lot of instants and sorceries, the spell mastery will trigger most of the time. Here we have one of my win conditions, Laboratory Maniac. Pretty self-explanatory. If you would draw a card while your library has no cards in it, you win the game instead. Put Tasigur off to the side over here. Reality Shift. It's a good removal spell. Lets you exile a creature in blue. So, just because I'm not running white doesn't mean I don't have access to Swords to Plowshares or Path to Exile type effects. So, good card. Decree of Pain. It's a board wipe that also draws me more cards. This is a forest. This is a Skullwinder, one of my favorite cards that has come out more recently for Commander within the last couple of years. It's another Eternal Witness, but it has the drawback of you pick a player and they also get to Eternal Witness. But you get to take a card back first, which is nice. Island. Disdainful Stroke is a good counterspell. It lets you stop something important. Another forest. Sylvan Library. If you're running green and you like drawing cards, this is a good card for you. And in a deck like Tasigur, or as I like to call him affectionately, Tasigur. In a deck like Tasigur, if you're trying to win quickly, you don't necessarily care about your life total, especially in Commander. So this card is really good. Peregrine Drake. He's very important. I'll set him aside. We'll come back to him. Swan Song. It's a cheap counter spell. If you're getting into a protracted counter magic fight with somebody, this is a great spell to have in your deck. Botanical Sanctum. It's a fast land. Island. Sphinx Bone Wand. I'm a little on the fence about it being in the deck. I'm keeping it in for now because I haven't had it in play enough to really formulate a solid opinion of if it's useful in this deck or not. Now, in one of the matches I played yesterday, I did get someone from about full life, about 40 life, all the way down to about 28 or so, just with this card and me casting spells, getting into counter magic fights. So this card can do a lot of hurt in the right situations. This is a card I added to the deck after yesterday because there was one situation in which I desperately needed this card and I didn't have it in the deck at all, much less a way to go find it at the time. So I'll set that aside and we could talk about that a little later. Let's shift these around. Yes. Exploration is a great card for the early game. In the late game, it's kind of dead, but it's a cheap spell that you might discard or use to feed Tasigur in some way. Or if you're just trying to get a lot of mana and you happen to be drawing a lot of cards, it can be good in the late game. Diabolic Tutor. I had yesterday the new one from Kaladesh, but since this deck is more of a cool combo deck, I thought it'd be more appropriate to do this old school Diabolic Tutor that I picked up yesterday. Harmonize, card draw in green. Pretty straightforward. I love this card. It's great. Brainstorm, too good for most formats, but good enough for Commander. Farseek, a cheap land finder to go fix some colors. Negate, what it says on the tin, good counterspell. Limdol's Vault, I keep it in the deck because it is useful. I'm sure you all are familiar. You have cards that hide in your deck and that don't show up often. This is one such card for me. It's a good card when it shows up, but that's few and far between. This is one of my favorite cards for Commander, Felden's Cane. I prefer this to something like Elixir of Immortality for one important reason, is this wording is not the Oracle text. The actual Oracle text says, tap, exile Felden's Cane, and then you shuffle your graveyard into your library. What that means is they can't respond to the activation in a normal sense. For example, Elixir of Immortality, the elixir doesn't go away, it doesn't sacrifice, as it shuffles into your deck along with your graveyard as part of the ability's resolution. So if you activate it and then they putrefy or Crozen Grip your elixir, you lose the effect. But this, they can't stop it once I have activated it. So I prefer this one. It also costs 0 mana to activate, as opposed to Elixir that costs 2. So I can tap down or save my mana for something else and still have access to the emergency graveyard reset. Gitaxian Probe, it's really great for finding out if the coast is clear. In fact, it's so great about finding out if the coast is clear, it was just banned in Modern. So this is courtesy of my wife, Duchess Venom's Delver deck, and it didn't need them anymore, so I picked one up for this deck. Speaking of Crozen Grip, this card is a must-have in any green deck. It's just that good. Heroic Intervention, I didn't get a chance to use it at all, but I like it because if I'm using Laboratory Maniac as a win condition, I can drop this down in response to someone trying to do anything to my Lab Maniac. So this is good. Fabricate, it goes and finds an artifact, and that's useful in this deck for a variety of reasons, so I'll set that right there. That's another Forest. That's a Cultivate, another cheap land finder card. Reliquary Tower, very good if you're drawing a bunch of cards, and with Tasigur's win condition, or one of them, it's rather important. Old School Swamp, Terramorphic Expanse to find some land, Underground River. Now we're finding some land here. Let me just set that like that. Alright, so we're finding land, Polluted Delta, Command Tower, Treasure Cruise, another good card. It does compete with the Commander, but it's still useful. I managed to cast this and a Dig Through Time in one turn yesterday. It was great. I didn't find a whole lot. Well, I found stuff off the Dig Through Time, but we'll get to that. Capsize. This card, I cast it for the first time yesterday because I just put it into the deck. And I used it on a Nissa. I can't remember which Nissa. It's the one that her ultimate wakes up 5 of your lands and they become creatures. And it was just about to ultimate, and the opponent elected to try to cast a spell before ultimating, which allowed me to respond and bounce his Nissa back to his hand before he could ultimate it, and he would have killed 2 people with it, because our life totals were fairly low at that point. So this card, excellent, very good. And we have some more land. Darksteel Ingot, it's a Mana Rock. I have a lot of Mana Rocks in this deck, because I had a Paradoxical Engine combo that liked to do some stuff with Mana Rocks. I took that out after yesterday because I think it was just diluting the deck, and it just wasn't working out for me. Putrefy, one of my all-time favorite Magic cards. Dispel, if you're getting into a counter Magic war, this is a great spell to have, because 1 mana, just respond to the latest thing on the stack. This I have in the deck still, for reasons that are about to be made apparent, because I have Sanguine Bond and Exquisite Blood in the deck, and this allows you to, in a way that they can't respond to, gain a life and trigger the infinite combo. So I'm going to set those over there. Kodama's Reach, it's a functional reprint of Cultivate, or whichever one came first, I don't recall, but they're the same. Hero's Downfall, good card, kills Planeswalkers. Worldly Tutor, can find a Laboratory Maniac or any good creature in the deck, or a Peregrine Drake, or Deadeye Navigator, or things like that. More land. Academy Ruins, I'm not sure if it's going to stay in the deck, but for now it's staying in here because I do have cool artifacts that are useful. Bad River, it's an old, bad fetch land that comes into play tapped. There's the other part of that combo right there. So I'll just shift these around so you can see some of the win cons in the deck. Soul Ring, it's a Soul Ring. Baleful Strix, draws cards. Thorian Dynamo, it has mana. I'll set that aside and talk about that in a bit. Future Sight, it's really good if you're trying to fiddle with the top of your deck because it gives you more information. Granted, it gives information to your opponents, but the ability to play off the top of your deck is good. Liliana Vess, she exists to be a tutor. Verdant Catacombs. Ancient Excavation, I haven't successfully gotten it to resolve. Actually, no, I did get it to resolve. I take that back. I did get it to resolve, and it was very helpful when it did, because you basically get to filter your entire hand. Now, if your whole hand is really good, when you fire this off, it may make for some interesting decisions if you draw a bunch of stuff that's also really good. But it gets you deep into your deck if you have a good hand size. Cyclonic Rift. Deadeye Navigator. Okay. This is why I wanted sudden spoiling of the deck yesterday, because someone had these two beauties out. Deadeye Navigator lets you flicker a creature, and Mystic Snake lets you counter a spell when it comes into play. And one of my opponents had this out, and he was just countering everything else. He also had a Seedborn Muse, which I don't yet own, but once I do, it'll go into this deck. Because then you can untap on every turn and just no one can play spells for the rest of the game. I also didn't have this in the deck yesterday. I've added it because this is just too good. And what made it worse is I managed to get, in response to the Soulbond trigger, I tried to Hero's Downfall it and do some other stuff with it, but then he had a Venser Shaper Savant in his hand that was able to stop that, and then he had, also had a Torrential Gearhulk in his hand, so he had all kinds of responses to keep this combo in place. But the normal combo with Deadeye Navigator that I had in the deck originally is Peregrine Drake and Deadeye Navigator. With these two, you can make infinite mana, because he only costs 2 to flicker the ability, and he untaps 5 lands when he comes into play. So you activate the ability, paying 2, you float 3 more mana, and then he comes into play and untaps everything, so you're getting 3 positive mana each loop. And what you do is you use that mana to activate his ability an arbitrary number of times, because they can only put non-land cards from your graveyard into your hand. So you put your entire deck into the graveyard, every non-land goes into your hand, and then you cast, since you still have infinite mana, you cast Lab Maniac and any draw spell and win the game. So that's how I won the one table, and I actually managed to get into the top 8 that way. Because this player tapped down, this player had no cards in hand, this player was another Tasigur player, then a Mizzix player had no cards in hand, and then it was, I think it was a Jaleva Storm deck, and they tapped out as well, because they tried to stop the Peregrine Drake and Deadeye Navigator, but I had enough mana to, I think they bounced it, or it wasn't a remand, but they bounced the Peregrine Drake into my hand in response to me casting the Deadeye Navigator. And they realized that I had enough mana to just recast the Peregrine Drake, and so it still happened. Speaking of ways to deal with Deadeye Navigator, I did use this against him to try to kill it, but he had the Venser to stop it. It lets you counter target spell, activate ability, or triggered ability. It's a Void Slime reprint, a better, functionally better make of Void Slime. And I don't own Void Slime yet, but it'll go into the deck once I get it. Spoils of Victory, it's land get. Buried Ruin, a holdover from the prior version of the deck, I think, because up until the night before this tournament, because I didn't own a Tasigur, and I was asking on our local Magic Facebook group if anyone had a Tasigur that I could trade for or borrow for the event, and someone was able to get one for me. So I didn't know until the night before the event whether or not I was going to be able to play this deck, and this deck, until that point, was an Atraxa, Praetor's Voice, good stuff deck that was just kind of meh. But I was able to, the night before the event, a friend of mine texted me, said, I got you, man, I have a Tasigur for you. So I quickly rebuilt the whole deck, and it did pretty well. Like I said, I did win a table. I didn't win the other 2 rounds that I played, but that was, one of them was because the guy had this combo in play, and just no one could do anything. And the first round, I can't remember off the top of my head exactly why I didn't win. I got into some good fights. The deck acquitted itself well. I just didn't have enough counter magic to be able to fight down the other player. I remember what it was, is I tried to get this combo off in the first round. And we fought over it, quite a lot of counterspells flying back and forth, and I lost the fight. He untapped on his turn, and he had Splinter Twin and Zealous Conscripts, and pfft, then he won the game immediately. So that's how that happened. But this is a holdover from the Atraxa deck because it had a lot of swords and other equipment in it. Anyway, Ancient Craving, it's a good card draw spell. Overgrown Tomb, Last Word, it's the be-all, end-all counter spell in a counter fight. This is going to resolve. Dream Fracture, another good counter spell. Commander's Sphere, it's mana until you need a card, then you float a mana, sack it, get a card. Remand was funny because I feel horrible. I don't remember the name of the card that the person was trying to cast. He had a Nivix Guildmage in play, which lets him make a copy of spells that he's playing. So he played the spell, he retained priority, and then activated the Guildmage to make a copy of it. And so he basically tapped out to do this, because the spell cost 4, and then he paid 4 for the Nivix ability. And the spell was going to let him... It was one of those free spells from the old days where if it resolves, you get to untap lands equal to its converted mana cost. And he was going to draw and discard cards. I'm really sorry, I just don't remember the name of the card. If you're... Feel free to comment and correct me. I just don't remember what the name of the card was because I had never really encountered it before. But anyway, I called a judge and said, so if I respond to the first spell, because his Nivix ability is targeting the first spell and is going to make a copy of it, I can respond to the target being declared of the ability and remand the first spell back to his hand and cause the spell to fizzle. The judge says, yes, that's correct, so that's what I did. So he ended up tapping all of his mana for nothing. And it shut him out of the game because he died shortly thereafter. Eternal Witness, one of my favorite Magic cards of all time. Therese Nielsen's art is great, the effect is great. Excellent card. Thought Vessel, it's a secondary Reliquary Tower, because as you've seen with Tasigur, if for whatever reason this combo doesn't work, I like to be able to keep all those cards and do more things with them. And I have a backup win condition if this gets stopped, which I'll find when we get to it. Sunken Hollow, some more lands. Ponder, good card. Beast Within, just general answer for permanence. Preordain. You want to be able to find the important pieces of the deck, so there's a lot of card draw in here. Some more land. I run, I think, about 37 land in this deck. And Urban Evolution, good card. I run 37. I normally run 38. I normally don't run any lower than 38. But this deck is so lean, and so few of the spells cost more than like 4 or 5, that I feel okay doing that. And I also have a lot of mana rocks in the deck as well, just to try to accelerate my mana curve. Here is the backup win condition I mentioned earlier. So I have infinite mana, and if they somehow kill the Lab Maniac or stop it from happening, I can just exsanguinate and kill everyone. That's a backup plan. Arcane Denial, good counterspell. Dig Through Time, great card. So when I said I resolved Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time in the same turn, the Treasure Cruise didn't really find a whole lot. I had the Dig as well, and the opponents knew I had it, and I cast it, and I found exactly these 2 cards off of the Dig, and I proceeded to sit on them the entire game. This was cast like turn 6 or 7, maybe 8, relatively early in a Commander game, and then I ended up winning in the final go-betweens with this card because I just waited and sat on them, and I let all the other people get into counter magic fights, and I just let them duke it out, and then when the coast was clear, I went off. Emergency Recursion, it's pretty good. Counterspell, what it says on the tin. Swamp, Island, Temple of Malady, or Malady. So that's my Tasigur of the Golden Fang. I have a couple cards that I'd like to obtain to put in it, obviously. Void Slime, Venser Shaper Savant, a Torrential Gearhulk, a Snapcaster Mage. Those would be great cards to go in here at some point, but I don't own any of them because I just haven't put the money into it, and I wasn't... this deck didn't exist before yesterday. But I like this deck. It's the first time I've ever top 8'd at a Commander Jamboree, and I really enjoy it. It was a good time to play. I hope you found this fun and informative. I'm ThriceRisen. Thanks for watching.